This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, July 10th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my co-host, my son, fellow researcher, fellow investigator, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, analysis, and information that you will not hear elsewhere, or if you do, it might be a little bit muddied, muddled, or perhaps with a slant that is not consistent with your with the truth. And you're listening to the only show, I believe, and we believe, where the news is presented to you in a multi-dimensional format, 3D format, if you will. And I want to thank the listener who sent us the mock-up of the 3D glasses. Thank you so much. But we look beyond the headlines and bylines and bring you the news behind the news for new listeners. And I want to give a shout-out to Tim C., who Christian bloggers out in, I'm not sure exactly what state, but vineoflifenews.com. Hello to Tim C. But, folks, for the new listeners, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us at our home base. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. There, you can click on the Listen Live button, navigate to the BTR show, the proper show, and listen there. Or, by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network, you can tune in to us directly with crisp, clear FM-type audio at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. That's the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Spell it all out. 2 N's. Spell out the word and of course, .com, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. And, folks, thank you for your continued belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. I want to say God bless to everybody, and thank you, everybody who has reached out to us, who has helped us on our journey, on our quest for the truth. The truth is all we are after, nothing more, nothing less, certainly. But I want to thank you for your assistance, whether it is merely a word to another person to listen. That's done a phenomenal job. We were just told 74 countries, roughly, visiting, listening. Of course, all 50 states are represented, Canada, and a lot of Central and South America. So I want to say thank you so much. And, of course, Australia and New Zealand. Hello, mates. Just want to say that to you folks. But we're a listener-supported broadcast. I want to thank everyone who has helped us and are helping us stay on the air through your financial support. The money that we do get is going to equipment, hard costs. In fact, it's helping, like I said, helping us not only stay on the air, but expand to the point where we want to make listening to this show not only informative, but easy. And that's a key. But with that, Joe, it's Wednesday. What do we got?
Well, we got a lot going on. Tonight we're going to have, for the second hour, Stan Deo joining us, going over some important things with the Earth, the atmosphere, and what we need to know about what is taking place on, in, above, and around the Earth. The first hour we're going to cover some stories, and I don't know what you had planned if you wanted to take calls in the first hour, but that's something we talked about before the show. But a lot of news to get into. We have Fukushima radiation levels soaring. We have an Illinois representative requesting the National Guard to come in to stop the violence in Chicago. We have an arrest of Adam Kokesh, the gentleman the guy who was planning the march on Washington on July 4th. He was SWAT teamed and flashbang grenades and the whole 9 yards, and he's being held without bond until October 2nd when there's a hearing. We'll go over that report. Also, a wounded Marine was humiliated by the TSA and upon his return at the Washington airport by state capitol security. And Christians are being tortured in Sinai.
Oh, okay. Stop right there. The wounded warrior being molested, embarrassed by the TSA. Folks, when are we going to put a stop to this? My question is, when are each and every one of us going to say, no, you're not touching us? We can do this. If we all stick together, this is one thing I believe, and I've said this before, if there is any vulnerability to the Department of Homeland Security, it lies at the level of the TSA. Because in order for us to fly, we voluntarily subject ourselves to the crimes against our person and against our property at the airport. And folks, we don't have to do that. There is nothing constitutional about what is taking place at our airports. And I'll tell you, if everyone, and I mean everyone, stands up and says, no, 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 no touch my wife, no touchy my daughter, my mommy, my daddy, whatever. If everyone says you are not going to do this to us. But we have to act together, act in concert, and not act like idiots either. Act responsible, professional, but very firm. Look, we're not going to allow you to do what you need to do, or do what you want to do, I shouldn't say need to do. I think that if we do this together, if we have another initiative, Joe, and this just came to me right before the broadcast, hearing the news about this Marine. That's not what this entire show is about. But I believe that if we all band together and we say no, we are not going to allow you to nuke us or to touch us. We will subject ourselves to normal, routine security screening, but you're not going to put us through a nuke meter or a nuke microwave type thing, and you're not going to feel us up or feel our wives up. And I'm sorry about that, but about the language, but that's what it amounts to. I don't care if you've got blue, green, or beige gloves on. It's not happening. But we voluntarily give up our rights to fly. And this is part of the militarization, if you will, of our government. This is part of the conditioning of the populace. Wake up, ladies and gentlemen, not to our audience. I believe our audience is exceptionally intelligent, perhaps the most intelligent in the world. But we cannot allow this to happen. And if it puts you on a list, you don't think you're already on a list? You're on dozens of lists for whatever reason. But don't let them humiliate you, subject you to physical assault, mental, psychological assault. No, don't let them do it. And if we all stood together and said no, what are they going to do about it? What can they do about it? I'll tell you what they're going to do about it. They are going to back down. Not double down in this case, but back down. That's my personal opinion, Joe.
Yeah, it is bad what they're doing to people, especially any person. But when you see wounded servicemen coming back and having to go through this, it is different in a way, because these servicemen have put their life at risk to defend the rights and freedoms they come home that have been taken away.
Yeah, that serviceman is treated worse than some Afghani or Iraqi in Iraq. I mean, come on, folks. Look at what they're doing to us.
Yeah, in Illinois here we have the representative request National Guard help to stop Chicago violence. Gun violence in Chicago is so severe that a state lawmaker wants state police and National Guard to assist local cops. Representative Monique Davis is making the request. I'm requesting the press conference that Governor Patrick Quinn order the Illinois National Guard and the Illinois State Police to come to Chicago and work with our mayor, Mr. Emanuel, to provide safety for the children, especially, she said, at the news conference in Springfield. Other state lawmakers accompanied Davis to recognize the severity of the problem and its extent to which it carries beyond Chicago's troubled neighborhoods to the entire city and other parts of the state. Over the holiday weekend, 74 people were shot, 12 killed in Chicago, and Davis says the police don't have the manpower to make arrests. Also, in some other statistics here, I'm going to have to find the article, but they have 100 people shot in the last 10 days, and this is very serious. I mean, this is a gun-free zone. This is a place where they are one of the cities they use as a model to tote around their crime statistics or their gun-free. See how the gun-free zones work? Not so much in Chicago anymore, but definitely New York, where the murder rate has dropped from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But there was a major, that was when the crack cocaine was introduced into New York City. Crime skyrocketed, way out of control. And that's something I was looking into just a few days ago, going back through those numbers and seeing the drop. Well, it's still a very high level of crime that we are seeing despite the drop, and you can equate that, say it's a drop if you, by taking into account the drug problem, but if you take the drug problem out of the picture, the numbers are still astronomically high, and it is just to see that they want the National Guard called in. I mean, somebody has to do something. You can't take the guns from everybody. Only the criminals seem to have guns. What they could do, which would probably lead to more violence before it did to peace, would be to let that gun restriction go. But there's no way to solve this problem because unless it's a personal issue,
Well, let me weigh in here a little bit, okay? Because if you look at, and every city in every state has reports. They generate reports specifically from the law enforcement division for their law enforcement agencies. Now, in 2011, which is the last online, I believe the last, there might be the 2012 might be available now, I'm not certain, but in 2011, the total murders in the city of Chicago, okay, there were 433 murder victims in the city of Chicago in 2011. Now, folks, when I say city, I'm not talking about the surrounding area. We're talking about within the city limits. Believe it or not, the 2011 total was 0.7% lower than the 2010 rate. And if you can believe this, 53.3% lower than the total for 10 years previous, 1991. In 1991, they had 928 murders. Now, we're not talking about just simply gun murders. This is all kinds of murders. Okay? Now, people can, look, you can take statistics and arrange them however you want. Whether, for example, you could say gun murder, gun violence, stabbings, and so on, or domestics or gang-related. Indoor, outdoor murders. The analysis is really is beyond anything you'd want to really get into.
Now, the number I was looking for here, more than 100 people have been shot in only the first 10 days of July.
Right. Now, but again, if you take that number, the shooting, okay, why not include stabbings? Why not include strangulations? Why not include other figures?
Well, I mean, it's a much bigger problem. I mean, you could include those, but this is obviously something that's out of control, and it is not the law-abiding citizens with the guns that are the problem, obviously. It is the people who are committing crimes, people who are sitting there or running around causing problems, shooting people, hitting innocent bystanders instead because they have no training, or it's a gang wars, it's drug wars that are going on in the city, and the police don't even have enough manpower, according to these reports, to make arrests on the shooting cases that are happening. The shooting cases that are happening.
Well, exactly, but let me go back and give you an example of what I was talking about. For example, for 2011, there were, 433 actually 436 murders in Chicago, in the city. Now, just to give you an example, 362 were shot. Of the 362, 351, there was a handgun involved. One had a rifle, or there was a rifle in one. A shotgun were used in 5. Unknown or other type of weapons, 5. I'm not sure exactly how you have an unknown type of weapon, but okay. Unless, of course, you've got such decomposition or other factors. But there were 31 stabbings. There were 28 people who were killed by a combination of baseball bats, people's hands, feet, fists, or other type of bludgeoning type of instruments. 28 of them. 4 were strangled. 5 suffered blunt force trauma, including 3 from cars. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us, obviously, a couple of things. Number one, lawlessness in Chicago is out of control. And Joe, to your point, if you look at the charts, if you look at the statistics, these are not random, out of control gun violence via guns. These are, in fact, shootings that are directly related to gang violence or organized crime. So you're less likely to, how do I want to phrase this? You're less likely to, for example, to be walking down the street and get shot by somebody you don't know. It's usually going to be a gang situation or an organized crime situation. But having said that, they are taking, and I believe what they're doing is they're taking the shooting specifically and making guns the problem, number one. But isn't it funny that in a gun-free city as in Chicago that you've got such a problem with guns? Is gun control the answer? No, of course not, because none of the criminals are going to register their guns, and it's going to be an ongoing problem. So we all know the story.
It's a societal problem. Moving along here, Fukushima watches from the Wall Street Journal. Tritium levels soar on coast at Fukushima plant. More than 2 years after the devastating accident at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, operator Tokyo Electric Power Company is seeing levels. TEMCO. No, this is Tokyo Electric Power Company is seeing levels soar of radioactive element called tritium.
Or TEPCO, I should say. I'm sorry, you're right. TEPCO and Tokyo Electric Power Company. I'll stop interrupting. I apologize, but it's TEPCO. Yeah.
The problem spot is on the coastal side of the plant's heavily damaged number 2 reactor, one of the areas where TEMCO regularly monitors groundwater to check for radioactive elements that may have leaked from the plant's partially melted down fuel cores into the environment. In May, TEMCO found that tritium levels in the groundwater were suddenly risen to 17 times their levels in December. Since then, TEMCO has drilled more monitoring holes and stepped up measurements. They found tritium levels are continuing to rise, which the latest readings taken July 5th, some 20% higher than those in May. It goes on to say that tritium is a radioactive form of hydrogen with a half-life of around 12 years, which occurs naturally. It is also produced in the process of nuclear fission. It tends to flow along the water, both in and out of human bodies, for instance, and so is thought to be less harmful than other radioactive elements such as cesium associated with the nuclear plants. The U.S. EPA calls it one of the least dangerous radio nanocules. Well, that makes me feel better. They go on to compare certain amounts of radiation doses to stomach x-rays and saying it's not that harmful, but the TEMCO engineers think the sudden rise in tritium levels is a factor of the slow seepage of groundwater following the 2-year-old Fukushima incident. Right after the incident, TEMCO blocked the main routes of contaminated water to the sea. Trenches, ducts, and many which housed cables by pouring in hardening chemicals backed by concrete, where radioactive water still managed to leak into the ground, has been making its way toward the sea ever since. TEMCO believes the tritium spike may may show it finally hit the Unit 2 monitoring wells. Also, there's another story on the Fukushima radiation that came out from Zero Hedge that was not talking about tritium. We see this problem, and we talked about this before, the groundwater seeping back into the plant that is already very radioactive, which is a very bad sign. They're not getting fresh, contaminated water coming back to the plant. They're getting highly radioactive water back into the plant. And this situation is not being contained. It's not being fixed. It's not even an issue. It's out of sight, out of mind. And it is something very dangerous. And, it's a silent killer.
If you look at Fukushima, it's over 710 billion. Boy, I'm not even sure how to pronounce this word. Becquerels?
Becquerels.
No, becquerels. Okay.
Becquerels, yeah.
Yeah, help me out, audience. Anyway, over 710 billion of those things, of radioactive materials, are spewing into the atmosphere. This massive uncontained leak. And once again, you've got to ask yourself, aside from the obvious, why isn't the mainstream media reporting more on this? Well, we all know the answers, but we've got to really educate the people on the west coast of the United States and the west coast of Canada, and all throughout the United States, of what is taking place, of the contamination. And we not only let people know about the contamination, but what to do about it. And I firmly believe that that this is one of the most underreported, most important stories. I mean, this is huge. And like you said, out of sight, out of mind. But from April, from May, June, and even to the current month, we've got to take a look at what's taking place. We've got to understand how much radiation and how it's affecting all of us here in the States. And have you noticed too, by the way, it seems like all of these things that do occur are occurring north of the equator. Why is that? That's an open question. Why is that?
I have no clue, so I'm not even going to attempt to answer. Moving along in the news here, we'll bring that up to Standale. That's a good question. I was on the Josh Tolley show today. He is on the GCN network from 10 to noon Eastern time, and I stayed on for the 2 hours, 10:15 to noon, and it was a really good show. We had a fantastic conversation. We covered a number of issues. Anybody would like to go find the archive of that, check that out. Hopefully we'll be putting something up on the website from that. And he's going to be coming on our show hopefully next week. We're going to schedule him as soon as we can, as he has been a previous guest, radio show host, and growing. He is moving from his current place in Wisconsin to North Carolina. He said, and he's expanding his show from 2 to 3 hours, and he's bringing in, he's doing a TV part too. So I was very happy to hear that, as he is a breath of fresh air and talk radio, and much different than your normal everyday host. Not that it's mainstream, but just very different in itself. And while we were on talking, it was in the morning, and I didn't get a chance to go through a lot of news, but he mentioned the first thing he talked about was Adam Kokesh was arrested. So I found a story here that we're going to get into. A controversial internet talk show host was arrested at home in Herndon on Tuesday night after a videotaped July 4th stunt in which he loaded a shotgun in the district's Freedom Plaza, violating the city's gun laws. Information about the arrest of Adam Kokesh was posted on his blog late Tuesday. Online court records in Virginia indicate he was charged with one felony count of possession of a Schedule 1 or 2 class drug, reportedly hallucinogenic mushrooms, and one felony count of possession of a Schedule 1 or 2 drugged while possessing a firearm. Herdman, Dad, if you remember, was where we were taken to dinner when we went to D.C. the first night we got there by our good friend.
Absolutely, I remember. Yeah, yep.
So, a Fairfax County Sheriff's Office spokesman said he was being held at the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center and that he had refused to be fingerprinted and photographed. He is being held without bond, and a preliminary hearing is scheduled for October 2nd. Koshek's blog said that on Tuesday night, police raided his home.
Let's say this together. Kokesh.
Yeah, well, okay, Kokesh.
All right.
It said that the police raided his home, forcing their way through the front door with a battering ram, detonating flashbang grenades in his foyer. The blog said that the light armored vehicle and 2 low-flying helicopters barricaded the street, and police used dogs in search that lasted for 5 hours and involved more than 20 SWAT team members, it said. Mr. Kokesh was handcuffed and detained for questioning inside the home of the 1500 block of Snowflake Court before being arrested. The arrest follows the July 4th distribution of a 22-second YouTube video in which he is seen loading 4 shells into a shotgun and pumping a shell into the chamber. D.C. police and Park police were jointly investigating the incident. Now, let me ask you a few questions. Loading a gun, does it warrant loading a gun in a place that's supposed to be a gun-free zone, 2 helicopters, a 20-plus man SWAT team, and a house raid?
I think those are the wrong questions. I don't think you're looking at this. First of all, I don't think this man deserves the attention I don't think he deserves the attention he's seeking in the manner in which I think he's going about this all wrong. That's my personal opinion. The questions to me are wrong.
Regardless of that, just put yourself anywhere in the U.S. You take a YouTube video of you loading a gun, or you take a video of you loading a gun. You put it on YouTube. Does that warrant a 20-man plus SWAT team, 2 helicopters barricading the roads, and the level of response that was used to arrest him?
If you are referring to this gentleman specifically, I think he's demonstrated enough. Now, again, this is not to say whether he's right or wrong, correct or incorrect, that is. I am just speaking on the potential for harm to come to those. For example, if a 2-man police officer team would come and arrest him, or to arrest him, okay, regardless of the reason, does he present a threat that to those 2 men, to those 2 police officers?
Okay. So, first of all, he's a veteran, from what I understand.
Well, okay, and there have been a lot of veterans that have committed some heinous crimes. What's your point?
Well, I'm getting to that. He's a vet. No person deserves that kind of response to what. I mean, you would think that he would, have shot up a mall or had threatened the president's life or something to that level to warrant that response. And also, to be denied bail and to be held until for a preliminary hearing till October 2nd, that is months away.
Okay, I would agree with you on the preliminary hearing aspect of things. I think that's an interesting point. And, of course, being denied bail, that's, to me, I think denying bail prevents him from, and folks, I would say that this involves everybody that would be arrested. Once you are denied bail, you are prevented really from formulating, or you're hobbled to create a formidable defense for yourself. You need bail to speak with your attorney, to interact with your legal counsel, to assist in the acquisition and assembly of evidence. Now, so denying bail is Joe. Denying bail is a form of keeping this guy, keeping him down. It's a form of punishment.
Question from the chat room: did the police overreact when they came and stopped you?
Well, but no, you know what? Looking at it logically, purely taking me out of the situation, if the police receive a report of a potential terroristic threat, somebody that was
we know this wasn't an ongoing threat. This was stemming from a 22-second YouTube video that was posted online from July 4th.
But let me answer the question that you asked. If for example, if someone calls a police department, and I don't care what city, what town, wherever in the United States, that says, look, there's a guy that is armed, dangerous, and Lord knows he might have explosives in his vehicle. Lord knows where he's going. Lord knows what his plans are. And he's a clear and present danger to, I know he's a clear and present danger to whoever right now. I mean, and he's driving in this car at this location. To answer your question, did the police overreact in my case? No, not given the information they knew of at the time or were provided with at the time. No, of course not. But was the information correct? No, it was not.
Anyway, back to the Kokesh case. Whether you like him or not, should have no bearing on how this was handled. We can go back to an incident that happened, I think, at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial or the Lincoln Memorial, where they had a protest where they were dancing, and he was neck body slammed by an officer and arrested for dancing.
Okay, I recall that.
I mean,
right.
There has been. It seems that he has taken avenues that have been peaceful and tried to get his point across. This was also peaceful. It was nonviolent, even though a gun was involved. The action of loading a gun is not violence. So, I still am.
I think you're not
the news report is the police report missing something? Am I missing something? Because I don't care if I load the gun on the White House steps and then go home. There is no reason 4 days, 5 days, a week later for that level of response.
But there's an insinuation there. Okay. Now, the bigger question, I believe, and what no one is asking, or few people appear to be asking, could he be some sort of provocateur? Could he be a plant? Okay. Could he be attempting to stir up violence or whatever tension? I mean, there are other things to look at.
I mean, he's stirring up people to think. He did back off the July 4th protest that he wanted to start, and aside from his possession of, apparently there were drugs found in his house. Now, I don't know him personally. I don't know what his habits are. I don't know if those were his or not. Most likely they were, but either way, he was, like I said, a veteran. He owned a firearm. I don't know if the firearm was legal. It sounded like to me it was, because the only thing in the charges that are mentioned here in the Washington Times article is that he was in the possession of a firearm while in possession of narcotics. So, 2 helicopters, SWAT teams, probably, 30 plus officers involved, talking about over $100,000 in resources and for arresting somebody who posted a 22-second video of loading a gun where they're not supposed to be loading a gun.
Okay, but Joe, let me just say this. And I want to thank Marianne, because she's done a lot of research on this herself. Let's just look at the facts, only the facts, because this Kokesh thing is not going to go away, and it's going to be dividing people as well, their thoughts and their approaches to things. But here's what we know: he's 31 years old, born in San Francisco. His hometown, right, apparently, is Santa Fe, New Mexico. Or I'm sorry, he hails from Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's where he grew up, and he presently lives in Arlington County, Virginia. He claims to be a Republican, and of course he was a Marine. So we have a Republican veteran who had called on the American people to armed march against Washington, D.C., and then, of course, the capitals of all 50 states. Now, does this not fit into the Obama narrative of right-wing extremists? If you were going to create a character or an example to use in a lexicon, for example, as a right-wing extremist, would Adam Coquette not be that pictorial? And I'm not saying, again, I am not speaking to the correct or incorrect nature of his actions. I'm just saying, is this not what the lexicons are talking about? And in addition to that, think about this. You know how the lexicons speak of veterans, returning veterans, being dangerous? Is this not also fulfilling that particular lexicon?
Well, this is all, I mean, in the bigger scheme of things, the reason I got into the story is just because of the level of force that was used and the targeting that seems to be going on. But who was it that brought a 30-round magazine onto a show in D.C. that did? Is it David Gregory, or was it?
I don't recall, but it was.
He didn't get his house SWAT teamed. I mean, he could have had a bullet he put in the clip. Well, either way, it's the same difference, right?
No.
It was illegal what he did, right?
No. Now listen, Howard. Now listen to me. You've got a guy on Facebook as well, who is describing himself as a revolutionary. Now, once again, I'm not speaking to the larger issue of the correctness in terms of we need to take our country back. I'm talking about the methods and motivation. He's describing himself as a revolutionary. Now, that fits with the entry and with everything that patriotism, we'll say. I mean, when you're going toward that revolution, czar, revolutionary. But you know what really bothers me, Joe, about this is he said that he once worked for Organizing for America. That's Obama's. Non-profit. Okay.
But does he have a right to do that, though?
Well, of course.
Okay.
But is that consistent with the character? Is that consistent with what he's saying? Are his actions, both former and current, consistent with what we, with our own two eyes, are seeing? I guess what I'm telling you is, I understand you brought this up with respect to the response, the SWAT team response. I want you to look deeper, and I want people to look deeper. Are we being lied to? That's the question. Are we being lied to at every level? I think we are.
Yes,
and just as an aside, if you look at, for example, at his face page picture, there's this the picture overlaps the big logo of Adam versus the Man, and it's got his name underneath it. But if you look at it, and I know Marianne has done this, and she has sent me a lot of research on this. Of course, the "Don't Tread on Me" snake is there, but he's holding up a coin in one of his Facebook pictures. What Marianne found interesting, and what I certainly find interesting, is this: the coin has a picture of a triangle, an upside-down triangle, and the "Don't Tread on Me" type of snake within that triangle, and as he's holding up this coin, he's got one eye showing. Now, look at all the symbolism here. Again, that brings me back to the question, are we being lied to? Because if you look at the image, it certainly speaks of or indicates some level of Illuminati type presence, whether open or implied. So, you've got to look at this in a different, or from all angles, and know that we're being lied to at every step of the way. But in answer to your question about, was the force required? Did the force level was it over the top with respect to the threat potential? I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. And I don't think you do either, or any of us do, because we don't know what, just like my case, we don't know what was said or what was called in or what the police had. And again, I'm not taking sides. The point on this is not sticking up for or condemning this gentleman. I'm just referring to the facts as we know them. But again, understand, folks, we're being lied to at every level. So the facts as we know them could be totally incorrect. But I have a real problem with this because, boy, I'll tell you, it just feels to me like this is a guy who's doing everything. Now I'm speaking to motive. It just feels to me like this is a guy that's doing everything to cause division, divisiveness, and to cause trouble. Kind of like baiting someone or baiting a group of people. That's what it looks like to me. Is it important? It is to me in that respect. Is the issue of the response by the police important? Well, it certainly would be important to Kokesh and the people around him as well as the police, but not nearly as important as the larger picture, which I would urge everyone to take a look at the larger picture. That's the only thing I'm saying. And again, I'm not speaking to or about Kokesh as a person or, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever he's trying to do.
I don't know either, but
I'm just throwing out observations. It could be, I don't care if it's John Smith, okay? Yeah, and if you take, you've got to look at it too. If you take a gun in front of the Capitol and don't expect, or White House or whatever it is, and don't expect trouble, you got to screw loose, in my view.
We're going to move on here. We got about 18 minutes before the top of the hour where we will be joined by Stan Dale. Congress derails Obama's plans to arm Syrian rebels. This from RT. The Obama administration has authorized military aid to the rebel opposition currently engaged in a civil war with the government of Syria and Bashar al-Assad. Now it appears the U.S. Congress has essentially blocked that move over terrorism fears. Members of both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees have moved to enact stringent restrictions on funding the Syrian rebels, a move to prevent the White House from delivering on arms shipments, according to sources who spoke with The Hill. In mid-June, allegations from the White House that the Assad government had used chemical weapons against its opposition forces moving to dispose him, the Obama administration authorized arms shipments in a marked escalation of U.S. involvement in the region. This is going to be different in both scope and scale in terms of what we are providing, Ben Rhodes, Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor at the time. Now, according to sources familiar with the committee activity, restrictions on that increased aid to Syria's opposition may have essentially stopped the administration in its tracks. According to The Hill, lawmakers moved to block military aid out of fears that the weapons would fall into the hands of the terrorist groups. U.S. analysts are particularly concerned over the strengthening of the Syrian al-Qaeda-affiliated group Jabhat Nusra, also known as the Nusra Front. The Obama administration had long stated that the use of chemical weapons by Assad's government constituted a red line. It seems that lawmakers on the intelligence committees are more worried about the regional threat posed by Islamic elements now engaged in Syrian government forces. And yesterday we read a report on the UN finding that the rebels were the ones that used chemical weapons up to 3 times, which I don't believe either side until I see proof. I will not believe either side used chemical weapons until there is actual proof shown, and we can verify that. And speaking of proof, we had the Boston Marathon bomber pleading not guilty to 30 counts today in court. He came to court with his arm in a cast, his face swollen, pleaded not guilty at the 7-minute bombing in the Boston Marathon bombing, in a 7-minute proceeding that marked the first appearance in the public since his capture in mid-April. Survivors of the bombing looked on, gave a small lopsided smile to his sisters upon arriving in the courtroom. They go on to say here that he, leaning into a microphone, told the federal judge not guilty in his Russian accent and said it over and over as the charges were read. Then he was led away. And Tsarnaev was hospitalized since his capture with wounds suffered in a shootout and getaway attempt. faces 30 charges, including using a weapon of mass destruction to kill in connection with the April 15 attack, which killed 3 people and injured more than 260 people. The death penalty is what they're asking for if prosecutors choose to pursue it, or is possible if prosecutors choose to pursue it. Once again, going back to evidence, where is the video of him putting his book bag down where this bomb exploded? We talked about this many times. We don't have to go over it again. They've released every other picture of backpacks being exploded, to hired government contracts carrying backpacks. We know that they were announcing bomb drills before the bombs went off.
You had every single contracting department or government contractor working, or not working, but present at the Boston Marathon finish line. Folks, once again, we are being lied to with respect to what really took place at the Boston Marathon bombing. Now, are the lies big lies, little lies, medium-sized lies? It doesn't matter. The lies are present. And we get to a point now where we look at these issues and we ask ourselves, what do we believe? Was this some sort of setup? And, we can go way to the fringe, okay, and we could stay in the middle ground, or we can go away on the other side and buy the official line. But the fact of the matter is, we need to allow the evidence to speak for itself, but the evidence is being hidden from the American public.
Now, there's a piece of information in this article from the AP that goes on to say something that I never heard before about this case, and I'm going to read it to you, and you tell me if you've heard about this. Prosecutors say Zarnev, a Muslim, wrote about his motivations for the bombing inside the walls and beams of the boat. Remember the boat he was hiding on? He scrawled that the U.S. government was killing our innocent civilians. He also wrote, "We Muslims are one body. You hurt one, you hurt us all." Did you ever hear of anything inside the boat being written?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
I don't see pictures of it either.
Well, okay. Now, people, folks, please don't expect for prosecutorial evidence to be brought out and shown to the world prior to trial. On the other hand, some of the more simple, smaller, yet equally important issues, such as the video, if there is a video, then why not show it? In fact, by showing the video, it would memorialize the evidence.
As we talked about yesterday, not showing the bin Laden photos, how many times have they shown the replays of these Boston explosions where people were killed and had limbs blown off, and the pictures of the carnage afterwards?
Right, but those were chosen photographs. Once again, we're looking at what they choose to show us versus the entirety of what they could show us without compromising.
Distraction and deception.
Right. Right, and people were being lied to at every turn. And I know we're approaching here the top of the hour pretty soon, but I want to go back to what you said about Syria and about the chemical weapons. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I would urge everyone, and I really mean this, if you haven't done so with recently, there's an article by Michael Reagan at the American Thinker, Building on a Kernel of Truth. Read that. Please read that. Building on a Kernel of Truth. Michael Reagan, the son of President Ronald Reagan. The information contained in that article really paints the picture or provides the exact location as to where we are at today and what has transpired over the last several months, as well as that CanadaFreePress.com and our own website, HomelandSecurityUS.com. There are 29 individual articles that could fill a small book available at both CanadaFreePress.com and HomelandSecurityUS.com, giving you the information about the chemical weapons and about Syria and about what happens. But folks, understand this: Congress today might be saying, well, we're going to hold back funding. but there's also money from black ops projects and other money as well that can circumvent the Congress. No one is talking about that. We need to be warning people that Syria, when we hit the tripwire, Syria is going to explode. People have a tendency to believe that Syria is going to be like Iraq, Afghanistan, even Egypt will say. It's not. Those countries, and Libya, those countries imploded. Syria is going to explode. This, according to a very well-respected source of mine, I believe, in what he has said. Everything he said has been spot on since day number one. But understand where we have to really pay attention to. What we have to pay attention to is what happens in Syria. Now, I think through exposure, sunlight being the best disinfectant, I think because of exposure, we have pushed back the timetable of the people involved in this to the extent that had Benghazi not happened, and had we not reported on Benghazi, that we would already be elbow deep in a river of blood coming from Syria and a river of blood from both sides. But we already have nearly 100,000 deaths in Syria. It'll be tens of thousands or 10 millions of people dying in Syria when this does go.
I do have a listener email that speaks to what you're saying, and they made a good point. It is not we, as they said. It is, anything that is being delayed is through the prayers of the listeners. It is, we are nothing more than mouthpieces, and the Lord deserves any glory that is delaying what is coming. If we can be a part of that through our show, through our vessels, us being vessels, and Him speaking through us on the show, then yeah, I agree. But I did get an email about that. It was a very nice email, and
but understand this: everything that we're saying, and I'm saying this from my heart. My goodness, it's in things like this. Of course, it's the Lord. Of course, it's God. Of course, we're merely vessels. Please understand that, and I'm not so stuck on myself to think that.
No. I just wanted we just needed to clarify that because a listener sent an email saying that they heard, I think just the one night, I think it was the other night, and I agreed with you that because of the hard work and the people in the audience and what they do, that things could have been pushed back, but it's not by us, I guess. It needed to be made clear.
Well, and I hope that's clear, because the 5 weeks of Sunday programming that we did was really done. It was inspired through. It was done to push back, done to have people pray, and us know that the glory does belong to God, of course, and it is His will that shall be done. But we have to play our roles as humans, as people, as children of God. We have to play our roles too. And all I'm saying is that to me is a given. Believe me, all praise goes to God. But
okay. I just wanted to make that clear.
That's a given.
Okay.
So
excellent. We got about 6 minutes left before we're going to the top of the hour break, and then we'll be joined by Stan Dale. This piece of information I wanted to cover. Right before Stan comes on, I want to thank, I think Eric put this in the chat room, a new cloud type discovered, Undulus asperatus. Now, this is from meteorologynews.com. In the first new cloud type to be officially designated in over 50 years, members of the Cloud Appreciation Society are pushing for official recognition of the ominous appearing clouds. The Cloud Appreciation Society has designated as the cloud as Undulus asperatus, or alternatively, it's a Latin phrase for the same word, loosely translates to a turbulent undulation. Such clouds are relatively rare, but have been photographed several areas around the world frequently. The ominous clouds have been particularly common in the plain states of the U.S., often during the monitoring or midway hours following convective thunderstorm activity. These clouds are not considered a precursor to severe weather, rather appear to form following rain or thunderstorm activity. There are several images of these clouds. I'll post this in the chat room, but you go to meteorologynews.com. This is an article from 2009, but I found it interesting because I saw clouds like this today in our area. This is why I mentioned it on the show. We had some really nasty storms roll through, and I actually waited to come to the studio until the cell passed. It was a nasty one. It dropped about an inch of rain in 15 minutes. 50-some mile-an-hour winds, golf ball size hail golf ball and baseball size hail in some areas. I did not see that, but I was listening to the scanner and heard it reported. And there are, as you said, what did you say today when we talked about the storms? You've never seen a what?
Well, I've never seen the amount of groundwater in certain areas where I live. I've lived in the same location for nearly 20 years, and of course you become familiar with your surroundings. Certain parts, our ground is saturated, fully saturated, and I've never seen these small pools of water. I would even call them ponds, if you will, having been created since the end of winter, beginning of spring this year. Normally, there are wet spots in those areas, and the water is absorbed into the ground. But once again, the ground is so saturated that there is no seepage into the ground. So what is happening here? My question is, what has changed specifically this year that's been different over the last 20 years? Well, of course, it's the amount of rainfall, it's the precipitation patterns, and then, of course, that leads into the question, why? What's causing it? I don't know if that answers your question or if you were going somewhere else with that.
No, I wasn't. What we were trying to establish here is that there are things happening in the atmosphere, there are things happening on the level of the Earth, there are things happening underneath the Earth, there are things happening in space, and that's why we're going to have Stan Dale on in a few minutes to help us break down some of these things that are going on and see if we can get some more insight, as Stan is a excellent source of information when it comes to Earth changes, weather, physics, all sorts of different topics. He has The Cosmic Conspiracy, which is a fantastic book. It outlines so much from the New World Order to the Second Coming of Christ to all the Earth changes and things that have been happening for the last couple hundred years that have built up to where we are today.
Exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to mention this, okay? We're talking about, for example, when we bring Stan Dale on, we're going to be talking about Earth changes and technology. And you hear Steve Quayle, for example, talking about weather wars, the technology behind it, the physics behind it. Once again, these are not my words. I'm not attributing them to me, but someone had pointed me in this direction. Do you recall back in the 90s, who was our Secretary of Defense? William Cohen. If you do a search on the name William Cohen and exotic weapons, if you do that search, you'll come across some very interesting and some very revealing information. In April of 1997, then Secretary of Defense William Cohen was speaking at a terrorism conference at the University of Georgia. Now, don't forget, this is 4 years prior to 9/11. He was taking questions from media in attendance and, of course, asked a number of questions, but he referenced various exotic weapons that included, but are not limited to, the ability to use weather as a weapon, the threat of exotic weapons with respect to artificially manipulating the weather, generating or using electronic weapons to do various things, from activate volcanic activity and even cause man-made earthquakes. Now you think, boy, Doug, you've lost, you're off your nut, you've lost your mind. Well, the fact of the matter is, you've got a sitting Secretary of Defense talking about this very issue, and of course, the United Nations addressed this issue as well. I know we're up against the top of the hour. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Today is Wednesday, the 10th day of July, 2013. I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your patience, your trust, your belief in us as we walk through.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Wednesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Hour number 2, we are going to be joined right now by our very special guest, Mr. Stan Deyo. StanDeyo.com is his website. You can find his book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, on his site, as well as his wife's book, The Preparedness, everything and anything you need to know about preparing. Dare to Prepare.
That's right.
It is a must-have in a library.
Man, believe me, you talking about getting caught up in preparations. I have actually copied some of the pages and put some in the pantry. And my wife, it drives my wife nuts. Okay, it really does. But initially, anyway, and then she started saying, "Oh, this is pretty helpful to kind of keep track of what we have." And actually, now she uses some of the things from that Dare to Prepare book as a shopping list. In fact, I caught her actually using the copy machine in my office, copying the list that she at one time complained about. So, yeah, it's all about preparation. And I didn't tell Holly that, but it's really a funny story. And my wife had the funniest look on her face when I caught her using the copy machine to copy the very papers from her book that she was saying, "Hey, well, what are these doing up here in the pantry?" Anyway, Joe, go ahead.
With us is Mr. Stan Deyo. Stan, right there.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. It is great to hear you back on our show. It's been not too long since we had you on, but it's always great to have you, as you are full of information, and we just love to pick your brain.
Well, thank you. I thought when you said you're full of, I thought I wasn't sure. And by the way, Doug, Holly's listening to this tonight.
Oh, good. Well, hi, Holly. Hi, Holly.
She's waving.
True story too, Stan, and I got to tell you, my wife is one of these where, don't mess with my pantry, okay? But when I put that, there's a certain checklist in the book and it helped her get things organized. And like I said, she had the funniest look on her face, and of course, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Holly. I love you.
Well, she's waving over here. She's waving.
We have 1 hour, Stan, and there's a few things I'd like to get into with you. First and foremost, we talked earlier a little bit about this. The earthquakes we're seeing in the mid-Atlantic ridge and in the oceans. You talked about the Canary Islands, the softening or how these earthquakes are loosening things up near the Canary Islands. This is a big area of concern for a lot of people, as models and scientists have forecasted that if these Canary Islands do collapse, it would be a devastating blow to a majority of the East Coast and the people who live there.
Yes. Well, actually, in the Canaries, there's one particular island that it's a volcanic island, and it's called the Cumbre de Vieja volcano. And on the western slope, facing the eastern coast of the United States, there's a huge amount of dirt and vegetation things on that side that are precariously balanced, so that if a large earthquake shakes it from wherever and cracks it's like water barrels, in essence, that were formed by the different cooling processes as magma flowed up through this volcano over the years. It formed a cavity along the center or the spine of the island. And these catch water over a period of time and don't release it. Now, they're afraid that should a fracture occur and that water leak out underneath all the suddenly leak out underneath all the dirt and the mud and the rock on the side of the mountain there, that it will give it lubrication so that the shock wave at the same time will disengage that whole slope. That's huge. Now, there are two schools of thought on it, about how much of a tidal wave or tsunami or whatever you want to call it that it will make. But it's aimed primarily at the United States, probably Florida up through Georgia and South Carolina. Those would get hit the hardest because of the angle of the tsunami that it would produce by all that stuff falling into the ocean. Now, right now, today, in my earthquake forecast map, on the website, I've drawn a red arrow at an area above the Canaries, off Spain. It's been there for a couple of days, a big heating area in the ocean, caused either by weather or caused by what I think is subterranean heating, something going on there along a plate tectonic border between Spain and North Africa. Now, if you go down North Africa just a bit, just about 15 degrees above the equator, you'll see a large greening area, which is a significant temperature change in the sea surface, a rapid temperature change in the sea surface, which has been going on for several days now. In fact, probably a couple of weeks as far as my records show. Now, that's below the Canaries, and the other up by Spain is above the Canaries. So there's a report that Holly had on the website here a couple of weeks back, which talked about a new plate tectonic border, like a fracture line in the mantle of the Earth, forming on the west coast of Africa. That's where I have a red arrow pointing to the heating today. Now, that means, and all the earthquakes we've been seeing in the Atlantic now, that there's pressure building up under the Atlantic to fracture that plate and make a line that will probably go right through the Canaries up into the Spanish fault line at Gibraltar, the entrance to the Mediterranean there. So these things are going to be quite significant if this does happen. And in fact, they've written a paper about it forming a new tectonic plate border, and I'm seeing signals, electrical and temperature signals that are huge. In fact, a couple of weeks ago when this started, I could not believe my eyes because there was almost a perfect arc of the temperature variation, of the rapid development of the temperature variation in the Atlantic there, from say Cuba across to the top west part of Africa. It was like an arc, and I called Holly's attention. I said, "Look at this! It looks like somebody drew this on the map. It's just so perfect." That also could contribute to the fracture and the marking a new tectonic plate border. If it does move, it's going to be significant, not only the Canaries, but the actual seafloor itself in that area. There are other places on the planet that are also, at risk, and that's on the entrance to the Red Sea, and just south of that entry point, south of the Gulf of Aden. Been watching that for several weeks too. There are really a lot of strange earthquakes in strange places where they don't normally occur, and I just don't know which one's going to go first. I mean, even the west coast of the United States has been having a rapid temperature increase in the sea, which could be attributed to weather conditions. So I don't know how to read this one. It might be masking the earthquake forecast signals. And I think that's probably all I need to say on that at the moment, except that I will be keeping an eye on this as I have been. And as long as our data feeds to the satellite are not interrupted by whatever source or means, we'll have the data to make these maps for you.
Wow. No, I frequently check the NOAA, the buoy map they have.
Yeah.
And there is actually right now, it's hopping up and down right now. There's a water station there, 21,419, and it shows water levels, rising up and down 60 feet or so for at least the last several minutes. And this is one that I frequently see doing this. And sometimes I wonder if these are just anomalies with the mechanisms they use, or if these are real water movements.
Where are you seeing that? Where is that buoy?
That is northeast off of Japan. It is just below the big crust drop off of the Sea of the Oshkosh?
Yeah, okay, yeah. That Russian, yeah. Well, there is a thermal anomaly in the area right now. It has been for a couple of days. So that goes from China down through the northern islands of Japan and right on to the plate tectonic border there. I don't know whether that's causing it. Of course, if you get a temperature rise over an area of ocean, the barometric pressure changes, and a number of other things could cause wave heights to change in the area. I don't know if that's what's causing it, but is that the only buoy that's playing up, or are there others on the planet?
No, right now that's the only one I see jumping up and down. And as you said, there's been some significant earthquakes in various places. This is one thing that has concerned me, and I've been paying very close attention to, is we had, and I was reading the statistics from your book on the other night show, where you talked about the number of 6.0 and above earthquakes were averaging 3 per decade from 1897 to 1948, and we had over 3, I think, in a matter of hours on the other day.
Hold on just a second here, Holly. On our website, where's the earthquake stats map that you or chart that you have? You know about the USGS. How many? Do you know where it is? Well, it'd be more current than mine in the book. I would just. Okay, Holly's going to look it up. She hadn't updated for this year, but it's going to be more current than the data I had on that in the Cosmic Conspiracy book.
Okay.
Remember, the first 200 pages I haven't altered, since it was written, and in '78. So it's only the addenda, the appendices that I put on the end, and other information that is more current.
Yeah.
It's. I think you'll find the stats are pretty nasty. It's about 1983 or 84 things started to pick up, and they really got serious here in the last few years. We did talk to USGS about this, to the technicians there, the engineers, and sometime back, several years we did this, to say, look, the earthquakes over Richter, 5 are increasing and stuff. He says, well, as long as you take them over Richter 5 on the USGS report, you'll be pretty good, pretty right. He said, we've increased the number of detectors we have around, the United States and for overseas detection, so that you will be getting more earthquakes simply because we couldn't report them before, because we didn't have the instruments, detectors close enough to the source to pick them up. But we do think that if a Richter 5 occurs in, say, Australia, that our instrumentation should pick it up. Now, that's their story, but I've seen a number of earthquakes over the last few years that should have rung their bell at Richter 5 plus, and it didn't. Now, that's, so in essence what they're saying is that their instrumentation just does not allow them to pick up accurately a lot of the quakes, over on the western side, southwestern side of the Ring of Fire in the Pacific and elsewhere. So I use a European EMSC earthquake reporting service, which has their sensors over in Europe and out toward the Middle East, which does help, and some in Australia, which doesn't have that, they don't get that much data down there, and in New Zealand. So I use 4, well, maybe 5 earthquake reporting services to try to get a global picture of what's happening, because you just won't get it on USGS. I don't think it is any, nefarious plot to hide data from us in that respect, because they just don't have the reach. And I've allowed for, Holly and I have talked about, we've allowed for increased instrumentation to pick up more earthquakes and that kind of stuff. But after seeing all this, we didn't even need to allow for that, because they just can't pick up, USGS, the increase in earthquakes overseas accurately at this point. Or if they can, they're not making it known. Did you ever see? Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that you're right. I've seen many times certain earthquake monitoring sites posting earthquakes that the USGS never has, or even sometimes they'll put up and take them down before, and then other sites will still have them up. So there is some confusion as to why the data is being censored or why the data is not complete for the USGS?
Well, USGS has a lot of automatic posting that goes on when they get data in from sensors, from buoys and various other devices they use to get the data. Now, that is unattended stations. They've got a lot of them out there, a lot. So they automatically, the station sends the data, and at their concentration point before the data comes in for USGS, they then say, automatically it says, okay, this was a Richter 5 based on these parameters. We picked up P wave, S wave, and that's the deal. And later on, after the fact, it might be minutes or hours, a live person will look at the data on the major earthquakes and say, oh, no, the automatic system didn't get that right because they didn't take into consideration this double hump and this little trickle down here and whatever. And so they will reevaluate the magnitude of the earthquake. And that's why some of them will disappear, is because they've been reevaluated by a human instead of a computer. And that's, I'm giving them benefit of the doubt, but I do know, having talked to personnel in USGS, that they cannot report like severe earthquake, really threatening situations, unless they clear it through the White House, branch that they need to report to before they make it, release it to the public. They're in a gag order in that respect. And forecasting, even if they can, they on the same gag order, they got to run it by the White House and get an answer back to see whether they can release it to the public. And there's some support from me about how much you tell the public before an event like that, and how you tell them, and how you prepare them. Long term, I think USGS and FEMA and Homeland Security, they're all working together to prepare people in certain areas for major earthquake damage and major volcanic damage in the Yellowstone area as well, and east of there. The New Madrid area, California, all along the West Coast, and then in Utah and Montana and that area there, around Yellowstone area. Those people have all been given one form or another of warning and preparation trainings and drills and things, and the emergency response teams have been trained as well. So gradually they're letting it sink in that things are going to get, a little more serious in the future sometime. And so by preparing the people that way, they're hoping that when they do make the announcements, that it won't cause undue panic. There will always be that and looting stuff. But I do think that we're coming into a period of change here with all the sinkholes that have been occurring around the planet. It just indicates to me that several things, that the core of the planet is expanding, and so it's putting pressure on the crust, stretching it in areas that haven't been stretched before, or a long time anyway. And in addition to this problem, the magnetic field of the Earth is starting to wobble and produce many north-south poles, MINI, two other sets of north-south poles that are floating around in the Indian Ocean, and one was over toward Central America. They've now disappeared. But according to NASA's formulation and illustrations on their site about what would happen in a magnetic pole shift, what I'm seeing is occurring much faster than what they say it would on their images of the turbulent reversal of the north-south pole because of the magma reversal inside the planet, the hot melted core. All these things together are painting a very interesting picture for our next decade or less. And if you throw on top of that problems from the sun, then it just becomes enormous problems for the whole planet.
Wow. Stan, do I hear you correctly? Okay, now, if I were listening to this broadcast and kind of walked in the middle of it, you're talking about earthquake preparations and other preparations. What are we looking at here? Are we looking at the government knows, or the scientists know that there will be earthquakes that will cause significant damage here in the States specifically or elsewhere?
Yeah.
And, okay. And the most vulnerable would be obviously the coastal areas, correct? Because
no, not only that. The New Madrid fault line and a new fracture zone from that heading west through Arkansas and Oklahoma.
Okay. All right. So why aren't they just coming out? I mean, they're telling us, but they're not really telling us everything, is my gut feeling here. They're saying, look, There's going to be an increase in earthquakes, but they're lacking the specificity, to me anyway. And well, very simply, is this a natural occurring phenomena, or is this something that they are doing?
No, this would be natural, in my opinion. The ones that we're talking about are natural events. There is a huge seismic pressure building up in the Juan de Fuca plate just off the coast of Washington State and Oregon, and at the very tip of the Juan de Fuca plate. That pressure might release a Richter 9.5, like the one that hit down in Sumatra. Now, that 9.5 earthquake on the west coast would produce certainly tidal waves that would head to, or tsunamis that head toward China and Japan and Australia. But the damage it would do, like the backwash from that thing, the tsunamis that would come back after the first 9.5, and then the residual or aftershocks that come after that, all these would produce waves and waves and waves of intrusion tsunamis along the west coast there, as far down as San Francisco, even further maybe, depending on how much of that rips when it does. Now, this is a known fact, and they have published and talked about this, that someday this will happen. Oh, by the way, it's overdue, according to statistical analysis, some 10 years or so. It's the only spot on the Ring of Fire where pressure's been building up like this that they've recorded. The only one that hasn't released the pressure, and it's increasing every year that we don't have that major earthquake release. Now, you can't, Doug, if you put yourself in the position of the guy that's got this knowledge at the government level, high government level, and, forgetting for the moment conspiracies and, secrecy and all that, if you were sitting there with this information and you had a pretty good guess, your scientist said, we're pretty certain that this earthquake is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months, and it's going to, disrupt everything along the west coast. Now, we're not positive, but we're pretty certain, they say. Now, you sitting there, Doug, what would you do? What would you do? Flip the coin and say, okay, I'm going to gamble that they're right. We're going to tell everybody to get out of Dodge. Industry, business, possessions, looting, all kinds of things. Anarchy would break out as people started to panic and get out of there. There wouldn't be enough police force to handle it. Now, that's announcing before it happens that it might happen. And then, of course, if you do announce and it does happen and people have got out, you'll save some. That's your winning side. The losing side is nothing happens and you've destroyed, the local economy over there for years to come. And a lot of people die, a lot of looting occurs, and, all kinds of headache. This is the same kind of decision I'm saying that you would have to make. If you were sitting there, if you were sitting in Pinatubo over in Asia, when Pinatubo blew, I saw the video presentation of the guys watching earthquakes under Mount Pinatubo and trying to figure out, this is scientists, right, not politicians, is it going to blow or not? Are those harmonic tremors enough? And they waited and waited to the last minute, and the guys put their jobs on the line. They had to say, evacuate 1 million people because it's going to happen soon, right now, get them out. And they saved a lot of people that way because it did blow and it did do the damage that they thought it might. But the guys doing it were chewing their nails because if they were wrong, it was their head. They were going to take the fall.
Point well taken, actually. I guess I wasn't looking at the larger picture of that. So,
well, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to ask you, with these earthquakes we've been seeing across different parts of the Earth that are not common, and they seem to be of a high magnitude, above 5.0, why are there no aftershocks to these earthquakes? To many of them.
It depends upon a lot of things in the structure of the area where these earthquakes occur, and whether they were subduction type earthquakes or slip fault earthquakes or what. The areas that are quite interesting to see aftershocks are here. One of them is here in the United States in the Salton Sea area in Southern California. That area down there, boy, you get a Richter 5 even, and it rings on, and you get residuals, aftershocks on there that you can be impressed by. If you get Richter 7 or something, you're really impressed with the aftershocks. Now, it is because of the structure and where that fault line or tectonic plate line is down in the Salton Sea. It runs right through it. That is balanced over an area that's kind of precarious and thin, so that it will support this oscillation, which produces the aftershocks. Other areas that are older crusted material and harder, they're not going to produce, as many aftershocks unless it's a Richter 8 or 9, and that'll be a bell ringer for anything. But the smaller ones like that, usually it takes a special formation of material underneath it, and thickness and density and all that kind of stuff to create a cascade of aftershocks. At least that's what the current wisdom is, anyway.
Wow. Okay.
Now, you mentioned something about the sun. We were talking about the earthquakes and the different things that are coming, and you said, also things that will happen with the sun. Can you expand on what you see happening with the sun? We know we're in a solar max where sunspots and CMEs are going to be frequent and more intense. Aside from those, or is that what we're looking at? Really bad solar flares?
I think that the reason that NASA named this current solar sunspot cycle, number 24, named it a grand solar maximum, and we're right in the middle of that, is because they have other data that would suggest something horrific is going to happen during this cycle, and it's not just an increased number of sunspots. Again, it's the issue of how much do you tell the public directly, or how much do you hint at to tell those that are have the eyes to see and wisdom to do something about it, to take action to prepare for this. The global planners, I've looked at and printed even some of the documents that I've gotten a hold of from the Club of Rome and from a CIA agent that I actually. I got something out of his briefcase that was handcuffed to his hand years ago, and it's now part of its public knowledge, and it's the report on the progress of the strategy for survival project for the Club of Rome by Masarovich and Pestel. Anyway, in that document, kind of hinted at they want to reduce the population. We've got too many useless eaters. And so when they make announcements that you and I and people who are thinking can see between the lines what they're trying to tell us and make appropriate action personally, we're probably the part of the gene pool that are going to let survive. And the rest of them, are just going to have to fend for themselves and hope they make it through the chaos that ensues. As I say, it's a hard decision. I try to put myself in the positions of authority to tell people this in our country or in China or whatever. And, Doug, you and I have met enough people in life that disappoint us to know that we cannot trust the mob to behave rationally. And that's what we're going to be dealing with, is lynch mob mentality and looting mob mentalities when these things do come. And they will do the same thing when you report it if it doesn't come. It's just, the sun is, since 1992, the sun has been changing the frequencies that it outputs. Now, you think, okay, big deal. But it's ultraviolet and a couple of bandwidths, and these bandwidths are now increasing. And ultraviolet doesn't burn you so much in the higher frequencies we're talking about, but it does, like it's so bright, it adds a blue whiteness to the output of the sun. If you'll notice on a clear day, if you're out of the city out where it's not polluted, you'll see the sun is getting brighter yellow, a whiter yellow. I've seen it when it first started. I was down in Australia when a hole in our ozone layer appeared over the Western Australia coastline and stayed there for several days. It thinned and allowed some of this ultraviolet radiation to come down. Now, it didn't exactly burn us, but it was so bright that your eyes watered and cried driving down the freeway during the daytime from the brightness of it. And there were public health announcements to housewives, put your sunglasses on while you're doing the white linens out on the line to dry, to save your eyes. And I could feel pinpricks of it going through my jeans, straight through them into the leg. Now, it didn't burn me, but it was uncomfortable. This was a small sample of what we'll be getting if our magnetic field continues to weaken at its present rate. well, it's going to increase anyway. It's doing it exponentially, but this will be the same thing will happen when that gets so weak that it allows all the ultraviolet radiation coming from the sun right now and the new stuff coming to penetrate our atmosphere and hit things on the surface. As I say, the ultraviolet in these frequency ranges will not heat us up as much as the infrared, which is the visible light range in the orangey yellow type range that we're getting. And you get your sunburn. Ultraviolet will give you sunburn in certain frequency bands, but in others, it can increase greatly, and we can survive without the planet melting. And this is what I'm afraid is happening with the sun: is it's moving toward a change in the nuclear chemistry of the sun, and it may change over a period of a few weeks from being the fission reaction, primary fission reaction is now. Fissing hydrogen to where it is fusing and making helium reactions, an HE reaction, which would put out a whole new spectral bandwidth from the sun. And I don't know whether it'll be redder or greener or yellower or what. I think it'll probably go toward the red side eventually, but it might be bright white for a while. And that means that it would throw off dust and other particulate matter as it changes the chemistry. It will blow off things, and its diameter may even change. Maybe not massively, but certainly a little bit. This is what I fear is in the making for the next decade, and why NASA, just for no reason at all, proclaimed it to be a grand solar maximum, because we've never had one of those. There's never been a solar sunspot maximum called a grand solar maximum. So why did they do this? Especially when the sunspot count in this cycle is so low. I mean, it's not even worth mentioning. But we are getting X-class flares out of coronal holes that do appear rather than the sunspots. You don't see those except at certain light frequencies that they take the pictures at. But that's what I think we need to watch is the sun. It's the primary driver, the energy source for our entire solar system and all life on these planets such as it is, where we have life out there. And on Earth, it is the prime mover of what the politicians have tried to claim is global warming due to, lifestyles of the humans and animals and plant life, and our manufacturing complexes, whatever. This is a contributing factor, maybe 5 or 6%, but the rest of it is the sun. And even biblical prophecies in the Book of the Revelation do talk about a period where the sun changes its light output and where it gets so bright that it burns a third of the trees and the green grass on the earth and a third of the fish in the oceans. So that does tell you that if we're in that period of time that the prophecies are talking about, and even like with Nostradamus and some of the other less credible, or accepted prophets, they do talk about a time when the seas will boil fish from the heat. The Hopi Indian have even told Holly and I this personally, that it will be a several-week period where the sun gets so bright and uncomfortable that you have to go into the caves or underground, kivas or something to withstand the heat till it passes. It's a changing state.
Is this what we're? Forgive the academic nature of the question, but the rise in temperatures, for example, in the desert valley, the record-setting temperatures. Is this an artifact or a consequence of the solar activity?
Yes, and other things. I do believe that the change in the magnetic field inside the planet, the weakening of it, is allowing more of the sun to come through. So the combination of geophysical changes, geomagnetic changes, and the solar activity combined together are producing extremes in weather, so that they're bleeding over into areas where they weren't before. The drought becomes extreme and spreads to other areas, and the flooding becomes extreme and spreads to other areas. We're going to see, more of the derechos, the land hurricanes in straight lines, more tornadoes in various places, and more sea spouts, water spouts. These things are a result of these combined changes in the Earth's magnetic field and the core, and the atmosphere becoming, less resistant because of the magnetic field weakening to the cosmic radiation, to the solar radiation. Because this is heating up the environment, even the sea is being heated up in various places where you have a phytoplankton, small, microbial size sea life. They're absorbing these new bands of ultraviolet and saying, "Oh, that's great. We'll grow in that." And so the phytoplankton and some of the other archaeobacterial forms are growing and multiplying. So that light is not reflected back out into the system. It is trapped in living creatures, and they're heating up the ocean just by their living. And so we've got these kind of things combining to create chaotic extremes, I mean real extremes in our weather and our climate. And, I don't have to tell most of your listeners and yourself, this last 2 years, this one particularly, the seasons have been weird, early, short, for growing things. I mean, here where we are, we saw our orchard totally stripped, because of unseasonal warming, blossoming, then severe freezes and frost dropping all the buds off, then winds that were up to 15, 60 miles an hour, gusts here, blew everything off the trees except the leaves. And we've got a great growing climate for, like vegetables now than in intense raised gardens. But other than that, we're drier. We're so dry here that, a rainstorm to us is a sprinkle, that actually makes 2 or 3 drops hit you when you walk outside, and that's it. We're just really dry here.
Well, if it wasn't illegal for us to collect rainwater, Stan, we'd put some barrels outside and send them your way, because we've been getting more than our fair share of rain as of late. This has been a very rainy summer for us. And
yes.
The weather, it's just, my father and I were talking before the show, and he said he doesn't remember a time where there's an area near our house where this has not dried up. It's been soggy and muddy, and this is a place where in the summer months, and gets as dry as it can for where green grass grows. I mean, we have grass that starts turning brown about this time of year from the lack of water and the heat. But now we are, soaked, just completely soaked. And other parts of the country are seeing lots of the rain increase also, and while others are seeing the drought conditions.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something we heard, a discussion of it. There have been many discussions on the radio and the blog radio and coast to coast and things like that in the last year or two about this biodiversity wildlands project United Nations instituted and suggested the United States adopt, which we haven't yet, but they say that officially, but yet they are. They've marked areas all over our country to herd people under Agenda 21 to herd people into concentrated city areas, into smaller living accommodations, and to protect the wildlands from us, in essence, so that they can control the wildlands, and the logic goes that they can use it to grow crops, etc., and water, they can control water in all these adverse conditions. And the weird thing about this to me today is I was looking at page 194, 95 in my book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, where I printed that document I got from the CIA courier about what they were going to do in 1977. They had already planned what we're seeing now in this Agenda 21 and the biodiversity. And it was a long-range plan. They used computer modeling on the biggest IBM computers they had at the time. And now, with the computers we've got, their modeling can be ever so much more specific. And they're going to hurt us, and they're going to take property away from people. They're going to move them off of homes they've had for generations inside park areas or wilderness areas. Their families put it there, and they were allowed to stay inside while the federal park was built up around them. I've seen several homes up here in the mountains that are like that. But they're going to move people off of that and say, now you can't live here any longer. This is a protected biodiversity landform. Sorry, see you around. And I guarantee you the restitution, the replacement housing for them will not be as big or as comfortable as the one that they've been living in. Biodiversity plans, I've been looking at them all afternoon. These homes they're talking about are like 800 square foot homes where you have a bedroom for 2, a bathroom, a kitchen, a dining room combined. You can hardly turn around without bumping your elbows on it. And they're wanting to reduce us to between that and maybe 1,200 square feet, and very dependent on the community water, electricity, power, heating, and all that stuff, the phone. And you can't be independent and have your own little digs out there in the wilderness. They want to get you out of that so they can control that land. And I'm looking right now at a simulated reserve and corridor system to protect biodiversity, a map of it, that was produced by Environmental Perspectives in the United States, and it was done at the request of the Senate to look at it to see whether or not they were going to vote to accept the UN biodiversity suggestion for the United States. We're in what's called Region 1. Out of 10 regions, Canada and the United States are in Region 1 of the new global model for the planet. And this is exactly where we're being headed, exactly what the CIA document showed, and I've gotten that in the Cosmic Conspiracy. I've
right.
even got it. I mean, look at page 200, the map of the world, and how there are 10 regions, and they've been doing this since at least 1977.
Yeah, I'm looking. In fact, I've got your book in my hands right now. I'm looking at pages 193 through 200, and the big thing here is the Club of Rome's 10 global groups, and of course, as you mentioned, the Biodiversity Project, population control measures, and so on. And this is an incredible plan for what we're seeing. What?
Yeah, we also have the President's Climate Action Plan, where it includes a lot of the language in here, Stan, of what you're talking about, the sustainable development through creating new cordoned-off lands, calling them wetlands, forest rehabilitation areas, where they're going to move population centers into closer together, bigger megacities for the purpose of cordoning off the rest of the Earth, or the USA land, for federal purposes. And this is all done under the guise of environmentalism, when what we're hearing from you and many other people is that this environmental problems are not being stemmed from our carbon dioxide emissions. These are being done across the spectrum of the universe as things are changing, not just with our Earth, but with the Sun and other planets as well.
They're trying to turn us into a planet of, in a macro scale, of little, like, bacteria forms, where a city is a bacteria with little arms reaching out into the wilderness, that they control that outer part. They definitely want us to go under their total control, so that we cannot screw up, the extra space out there. They think we're not capable of managing land, like a lot of people have been doing for generations here. But the buzzwords, you can see it on our website here just today, under July 10th, a picture of the president wiping a handkerchief on his head, like wiping sweat off, and underneath it, he's got a note. And to warn people about the buzzwords you're going to hear, like this. You hear sustainable development, that means look out and hold on to your property, because they're going to come for you and be moving you out because they want to make open space out of your area. Now, it's not going to be everybody, but they're going to get a lot of the rural homes and stuff and move them into these city areas if they can do it. And their argument is, well, we've got to reduce global warming by, the human, signature and footprint, in living. So we're going to collect you into the city areas, and we're going to make efficient use of your power consumption. And, they don't,
to save you to save you money on your bills, we're going to control your energy consumption.
That's it. And they're going to control your water supply. They're already doing it to you and to us here in Colorado. If you go out and catch that 2 or 3 drops of rain we get here, you're breaking the law. And where you are, of course, you're getting all that, and you can't even do it either for us. And down in Australia, they're talking about putting meters on people in the farms that are getting rainwater tank, to supply the drinking water. They're going to charge them for that, for the water that comes out of the sky on their property. I mean, this is absolutely gone crazy.
Yeah, we saw that. Any non-absorbable property or what's on your property that does not absorb rainwater, even though the rainwater runs off your roof through a gutter, usually into the absorbable parts, they're going to charge you for places like your roof and your driveway. They're going to have a tax on that.
Yes, until we're totally modern-day serfs working for the landowner, for the barons.
Stan, I don't mean to interrupt here, but I've got a whole bunch of questions emailed from listeners currently to this program, actually from all over the world. But if I can just hit you with a couple, and bear in mind these will be unrelated, non sequiturs, if you will. But one from Kim. She's wondering about swarm at Azores, and if there's a volcano or something there. Are you familiar with this? Do you know anything about this?
No, I'll have to confess I'm not familiar with that exact thing. I guess it's some kind of a recent volcanic, earthquake swarm there. Is that what she's saying?
Well, she states, and I'm quoting exactly, I was wondering about swarm at Azores, and if there's a volcano or something there. Could you help me with this, please? I want to know what Stan's thoughts. If Azores could cause the tsunami. And that's from Kim.
All right. Well, all right. Last month there was a report that there was a swarm of krill in the Azores. Krill that the whales eat. But I don't know. Okay. Yeah, here we go. I'm just looking up what we're talking about. Apparently there's some concern that these are going to be, this earthquake from the Azores is going to be a tributary to the Mid-Atlantic Trench. Okay, yeah, I have seen that. I just didn't place it as the Azores. Now I remember. Old age, I claim old age. Yes, that could be a contributory factor, but I think that's going to be part of the result of that new tectonic plate border on Northwest Africa, Kim, which will cause the Azores region to fracture. There is a line, like a tectonic plate line that runs right through the Azores and over into Europe, near Spain. So I'm thinking that, yes, that will be part of this. And the earthquake swarms there are not high value at the moment, but there have been an interesting number of them. And I do from time to time go over there and actually look at the seismic reports on that area in the Spanish database because they're the closest ones. So, yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I have another question real quick from Kelly. Could the sun, and this is a quick one, could the sun be causing the Earth's core to expand?
Well, maybe, but I think more of the core expansion is due to the Earth aging. As all the planets and stars age, their diameter increases. And the diameters increase, and sometimes in some of the bigger planets, they will throw off rings of debris that's orbit around the planet, and it used to be a part of the surface or one of the layers of the planet. And as time passes, all planets do that. I think that's more for what we're seeing in the Earth's situation, but it certainly is not helped by the magnetic field reversal from the sun itself, which is we're undergoing right now, which can possibly trigger the north-south magnetic pole to flip-flop. In that respect, there may be anomalous bulges that form on the mantle from the pressures inside as the core, is in turbulent motion. That's about the best I can answer that.
Thanks.
All right. Two more quick questions. First one is, do you have any comments or news as to the rare tsunami that hit the East Coast earlier in June that we saw in New Jersey, the tsunami-like waves? Did you hear about that?
Yeah. I certainly, look, I don't think that it would be a seismic event that did that one. I might be wrong, but we've known for, surfers have known for a long time that you get waves that will add together and make a king wave, a big wave that will suddenly rise up and you can ride it, if you're clever. If you're not, you get pounded with it. But it's when the various waveforms add together to make one great big one. And I'm wondering, with all of the unusual events and the weather we're getting, that maybe there was a form of a king wave, but it was so big that it was like a tidal wave that came in as a result of all these larger waves forming due to our solar, temperature increase and various other things happening right now. I didn't see any seismic event that would have triggered it. Nothing recorded that would do that. And I did find it strange that they didn't tell anybody about it for some time. The officials didn't, but as far as news releases, the locals I know were aware of it. But it took a while for them to let the rest of us know. So as I say, I don't know what caused it, but a lot of things are going to be happening that are very unusual and will get really unusual in the next 10 years, probably less, as we go through this period of change in the sun and the earth. I can't. Yeah, go ahead.
Stan, if I can interject a question here, and I know that this is not what we brought you on for, but I need to ask you this. Chemtrails in the sky, okay? Your thoughts? I know we could probably fill a program full of this, perhaps. But what are your thoughts about what people or what they're spraying up in the sky and purpose? And is this part of a I look at how you put in your book here with the Club of Rome, their regional plan, depopulation, of course, Agenda 21, and what have you. But are we looking at a geoengineering and of a project through chemtrails, perhaps, or?
It started out that way. I mean, Dr. Teller, Edward Teller, did suggest and did file patents for putting metal particulates in high altitude over various areas of the planet. And because of the smallness of these particulate metal pieces, metal parts, they're light enough to stay, aloft for years and go where if they get up the jet stream, to go all over the planet. But primarily, the original intent of the chemtrailing was to mitigate the problems with the sun, to shield certain areas. Throughout
ozone remediation type thing.
Well, and there was some discussion of using it to shield areas of the surface from other countries' military spy satellites and things like that. That was in the beginning. But now, I mean, in the last year or so, Obama has allowed Russians by treaty to fly over and inspect us, over the country. And I think they're on the 17th or 18th flight of doing that. So if we're letting them come over and see that we're not cheating on treaties and stuff and fly over and take pictures of the United States, then I don't see that the chemtrails are any value for that. We're telling them, come photograph us. We're not doing anything wrong. You can see it, everything we got above ground anyway. But chemtrails have been used for other purposes in certain locales. The gels that are formed and fallen down to the ground and picked up and analyzed by people, the cobwebbing type stuff that dissolves in your hands, these were different kinds of chemtrails. Some were a result of the chemtrail metallic spraying combining with industrial gases that were above certain cities, and they made compounds that were rather unusual. And others were biological material, which indicated a test on the population or the plant life underneath. And that wasn't everywhere chemtrails were being done, but in the northwest United States they did do that and admitted some of that testing on human population. But I do think the majority of it has been to mitigate the huge increase in solar energy on the planet because of the weakening magnetic field of the Earth, and that these areas being chemtrailed are primary production areas where they need to try to get the crops to grow and not be killed to feed to people. Hungry people and people without energy get to be very cranky.
That's the truth. We're at the top of the hour. I have one more question, Stan, and this is about Comet Ison. We're hearing a lot of hype about this comet coming in November, and some people say it is something other than a comet. Some people say it's going to be a magnificent, bright, shining object in the sky. Your take on this?
Well, I think Comet Ison is definitely going to be an interesting one because it's already got a little chunk that's parted from it and is still orbiting it or trailing it. As it gets closer to the sun, it may throw off more of these things as the ice melts. It certainly will graze the sun. It's a sun grazer, that class of comet. When that happens, it's going to make a number of changes to that comet, which will leave debris in its path for some time, for years to come. We may see the Earth intersect that. Certainly Mars, I think, will get some of the debris from the Comet Ison passing. The Comet Ison passing will also trigger some things in the surface of the sun. I've watched a number of the satellite photographs JPL supplies, NASA supplies, of sun grazers passing by the sun, and as they pass by, it causes a flare, a solar flare, and possibly a CMA as well, depending on the strength of it, right as the comet passes on one side of the sun and continues its journey around the other side. But as it makes coronal mass ejection of that flare leap up as it gets close to the sun, within a few hours, a corresponding solar flare stroke CME occurs on the other side of the sun. I could see it in the photographs and the animations when it was happening. There'd be, the comet like ice would come, graze the sun, flare, tick, 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 flare over on the other side. It's like it bounced back and forth inside the sun, which, you might think, well, okay, so what? But the sun is big and massive, and a comet is tiny. Why would it make such a reaction that it would cause stuff to blow out the other side of the sun? That's kind of spooky. It's a very fragile sun that we're looking at.
Interesting. Well, Stan, we thank you so much for your gift of time to us. We know you're an extremely busy man, many projects, and of course, you and your wife Holly. I'll tell you, doing a whole lot to educate people. Folks, I urge everyone to visit standeyo.com. That's Stan, DEYO.com. There, check out his book. As a matter of fact, I'd urge everyone to get it for their library, The Cosmic Conspiracy, the final edition, 2010 by Stan Deyo, and Dare to Prepare by Holly Deyo. Two great books. You can't go wrong. Stan, God bless you, my friend. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with us for the time that you did.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Joe. God bless you both now. Take care.
Take care now. Thank you.
God bless you too, Stan. What a great interview that was. Stan Deyo, always a pleasure to have on. So intelligent and has an answer to pretty much all the questions. And even more interesting is the different pieces of information, questions he answered, has been certain amount of confirmation about other things I've been hearing about, been told about, been seeing in the news and different people's theories, from YouTube videos to news reports to all types of different outlets that are reporting on these kind of things. But we're going to go to the break right now, top of the hour break. When we come back, your phone calls at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. Don't forget, tomorrow night we're going to have Brother Marcus Samuel on for an hour. South Dakota, Native American minister to Native Americans in the region. Not going to want to miss that show. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This is a live broadcast. It is July 10th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me as co-host Joe Hagmann, a father-son team. It's my understanding, too, getting notes that the music for hour 2 just started in the middle of our talk, and apparently some technical snafus, but we'll get through that.
I'm also noticing that there's no phone calls for anybody that wanted to call in, which is very rare when we open the phone lines. Usually there's at least 5 to 20 people waiting in line to call in. And, there we do have one caller.
Okay. Actually, I did receive a notice, and I don't know if you got this or not, a notice from the BTR about their phone being down, or the trouble with lines, not exactly down, but trouble with lines. But we'll give out the phone number anyway. Taking your calls this third hour, 661-244-9839. So just to give you that heads up, go ahead, get in line, get in queue. We'll take your calls in the order in which they are received. Want to hear from you. Want to hear your thoughts on everything we've talked about so far this week. It's been an interesting week in terms of guests, rather eclectic listing of guests. And I want to just say something about what Stan Deyo was talking about too. In his book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, he does tie together the points that he mentioned, pages 193 through essentially 200. I've heard this from intelligence sources, multiple intelligence sources. Ultimately, we are being split up globally into 10 regions. Okay? That's the ultimate objective. And the sovereignty of the United States is going to be eroded by the power brokers, by the global elitists. And I believe that you've heard me say, yesterday or the day before talking about Mikhail Gorbachev on June 5th, 1990, talking about different things, including, or specifically about a New World Order coming to fruition. And all of these people are globalists. But what Stan talks about, the Club of Rome's 10 global regions, a lot of people don't know really what the Club of Rome is. And their role, they're part of the Illuminists or the Illuminati. And people have a tendency to think, well, the Illuminati is either a figment of someone's imagination or something in the past. No,
call it what you want. It is a global government formed by the satanic elite, right, carrying out a Luciferian agenda.
Well, the Club of Rome too. They're billed as a global think tank. Now, they were founded in 1968, and you might think, well, why do I need to know this? Because you need to know who is moving, who are the people who are moving the chess pieces on the global chessboard. When we talk about issues such as the TSA, such as the militarization of the local police forces, the treatment of veterans, the gun grab, Obamacare, these are all pieces on a larger chessboard. And whether you like it or not, we're being moved toward this globalization. The Club of Rome is one of the most influential, if you will, groups for citing or for structuring international geopolitical issues. And they describe, like I said, they're an academic think tank type thing. They describe themselves as a group of world citizens. Now think about that against the backdrop of Obama and others who have said, "Oh, well, we're citizens of the world." Is it right? Is it proper? Is it statesmanlike for a president of the United States to bill himself as a citizen of the world? Is he not a citizen of the United States? But all of these things that we talk about move toward the erosion of our sovereignty, of our civil rights, and we are going to soon, given that they meaning the power brokers, going to be answering to a globalist government. And how is this going to be brought in? Well, let's look, and I've got to say this. You've got to look at the economic aspects of things, because a nation is defined by their economy, by their borders, and by their culture. And how are we being assailed here? All three, through the illegal amnesty, if you will, that's being bantered about. People look at this as a Republican-Democratic issue. The majority of people out there don't have a clue about the larger picture. No one is thinking, or very few people, I should say, are thinking big enough or seeing the big picture here. When I hear people talk about, well, it's a Republican-Democrat issue, oh, man, it's so much bigger than that. And it took me so long to arrive at that. But nonetheless, that's what we're looking at. The Club of Rome, of course, is just one part of this, and they're and the globalists like Kissinger, the Gates, you name the Obama, Clinton's. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is not about American politics. This is about global politics. This is about a global agenda that is not suited for the common man like you and I. They are structuring this outlandish plan so they can live like kings and subjugate us to do their dirty work. And even in Syria, even in Benghazi, all of this is a result of their plans. They're moving us toward this, depopulation, global conflict, and the assailing of our monetary system, which which is extremely important. We're about to see, I don't know when, but we're going to see our dollar intentionally destroyed. And of course, we're going to be forced into a different type of currency. What's it going to look like? Well, personally, I don't know. Some say a digital currency. Others say an intermediate currency, SDR type thing, special drawing rights currency. Others say the Amero, at least for North America. But the end result is a currency where they, meaning the power brokers, can track every purchase, every move you make. And if you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it interesting? Over the last couple of decades, decade and a half, we'll say, maybe two, where these big box stores and these various national chains, they've all grabbed onto or adhered to or pushing these loyalty cards. Big box stores like Sam's Club or Costco, it's a membership, and they know what you buy. So as we look at this, see, all I ask you to do is look at what the day-to-day, what is happening to you, with you, all around you on a day-to-day basis, and how this all fits into a larger picture that few people want or even talk about. Or if they do, they stop short. They don't go the entire way. So, again, this is much bigger. People are not seeing that. And chemtrails, too. I mean, you know, people say, well, no, those aren't real. Well, of course they're real. Of course they're real. As a matter of fact, Stan mentioned this, and Mr. Scott Stevens mentioned this when we had him on, William Cohen, the exotic weaponry, the exotic things that the United States and other countries have. The chemical spraying as part of geoengineering is part of this. And think about this, what Stan mentioned. Think about this, folks. What's being sprayed up there, in part, is aluminum oxide. Now, if you doubt, for example, the existence of that being sprayed, you can look at the geomagnetic patterns of the Earth, and you can actually see how the clouds or the trails left by these planes actually are affected and follow the geomagnetic lines of the Earth. Well, that's the aluminum oxide. Well, what happens to that? Well, if they stopped spraying right now, it would take about 5 years for the sky to clear. But the fact of the matter is, what are the unintended consequences of their spraying? We heard Stan and even Scott talk about the intended consequences, or the intended the intentions of the spraying. But what about the unintended consequences? When that particulate matter falls to Earth, it's affecting the ground. It's like salting the Earth, is it not? It's like the ruining the soil and the crops and the forests and whatever because of the matter that's being sprayed. You can say, well, and we could spend an entire program on this, and we probably will. But you know, the chemical trails are up there, not to cover up necessarily anything that's going on with the sun. That's not to cover up anything that's taking place with the sun or the moon or anything like that. What people see when they talk about seeing the sun in different, look different or appear different in certain cases, what they see, or the moon appearing to be a different size. It's the refraction of the light emitted by the object, whether it's the moon or the sun, is what you're witnessing. But the chemtrails, they have military implications, allegedly, and as Stan mentioned too, and Scott mentioned too. At one point, it was to, and I'm not being technically necessarily accurate with semantics, but you know, to cover up or to provide chaff at 44,000 feet. But or to even prevent, we'll say, a nuclear device from coming into or out of orbit and into the United States, for example, by Russia or China or whatever. And of course, they would hit this particulate matter, and it would alter the precision of the weapons. But again, the unintended consequences is the result that we're seeing, the various aspects of this according to sources that I've spoken with. So look at the bigger picture, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the larger picture, and as we progress in time, as time marches forward, I believe that the veil is being lifted for many, and that's all I wanted to say. I didn't mean to dominate this part, but that's all I wanted to say.
All right, let's go to the phones. We're going to go to area code 770 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Doug and Joe. I'd like to talk about a surreal experience that I had regarding chemtrails. I live in Marietta, Georgia, and we're all, of course, aware of the typical chemtrails, the whiting of the entire sky with the trails and everything. This was something totally different. I'm not exactly sure of the time frame. I think it happened approximately 3 years ago, the first time, because this happened twice. I was driving down a main road during the day, and directly ahead of me, I looked, seeing the horizon. It was like a line was drawn straight down the middle of the horizon. One side, the left side, was totally black, jet black. They were not storm clouds. There were no clouds. It was just totally dense black. The right side of the line was a blue sky with white clouds, no chemtrails, just a perfectly normal sky. And I just looked at it and I said, this is surreal. This is unreal. And I remember it happened again, but I don't remember the time frame. It could have been the following year, I'm not sure, but I do remember saying, oh, this again. Now, last summer, I was driving in the old part town of Marietta. It's sort of like a quaint village area. Small shop.
Beautiful place. Been there. It's beautiful.
Okay. So, it's not far, and I don't live far from a military airport, and I think this is connected for sure. That's my opinion. It's so the little village area. It's like small shops, courthouse, park, and the roads didn't keep up with the population. So the traffic moves very, very slow. It's a very tiny area. So I was in my car and just crawling, and I just looked to my left up because I saw something moving, and just above the treetops were two planes, very small planes. They sort of reminded me of a crop duster type planes, but or Second World War small planes. Right. They were very small.
Small.
They were, I can't say the word spray because it wasn't really a spray. It was like incredible. Each one, I don't remember if they had 2 or 4. I'll say exhaust because for lack of another word, this dense, totally black, it came out like a funnel shape. It was totally black, dense black, and it did not dissipate. They were flying on the outside of the perimeter of the road, just over the treetops. They were so low, it was incredible. Two of them together, they were so close that they could have collided. They were so close to each other. And I'm saying, well, this has to be what I saw when I saw the horizon. One side was totally black.
Couldn't they have been crop dusters? I mean, seriously, you live, down in that area, it would be common. Wouldn't this be a common occurrence to see a crop duster like this?
I've never. The first time, I shouldn't say the first, but the last time I saw a crop duster was when I was a youngster living in New Jersey. There was a farm across from my house, and they would spray for mosquitoes in the summertime. That's the only time I saw a crop duster. And that's why I remember what it looked like. But this here, I don't know what kind of plane it really was. It was small, like a crop duster, but it also looked like these planes that they used during the World War II. They were very small planes, but they weren't private planes. You could tell. I don't know what it was really. I did see this type of plane sitting in the where they parked the planes on this military Air Force base. It's not far from. There's an Air Force base not far. It's very small. I do not live on the air traffic path, but I have seen the black helicopters come at night, like a whole lot of them. They woke me up in the middle of the night, and I, looked out the window. I said, "What the heck is that? It sounds like thunder." I didn't know what it was. And they were black helicopters, a whole slew of them. But I'm not on their path. I'm not on the flight path of planes, so it's very rare for me to
understandable,
hear a plane.
ma'am. And there are a lot of odd things going on. People are seeing helicopters to chemtrails to different types of clouds that shouldn't even be giving certain shadows the way they are in the sky. We really appreciate your call and you sharing that with us. We're going to move on to another caller and keep us updated as to any other anomalies that you might see like that in the sky. They also do a lot of spraying against mosquitoes. They have all types of forms of sprays that they induce into our atmosphere now in all types of different ways. And just the way you described that about the small planes doesn't seem like it's consistent with chemtrails. But with that, we'll move on to the next caller, area code 325. We have 2 325 numbers. We're going to go to 3252. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yes, this is Liz out in West Texas. Just wanted to say hello and tell you guys that y'all are doing a great job. I didn't know if y'all were aware of the virtual Vietnam War archives that you can go onto at Texas Tech University. There's an entire virtual archive on weather modification hearings that were done in 1974 and 75, and all the weather modifications that were done during, the Vietnam War, specifically on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They used it to cloud seeding, of course, and fog to prevent troop movement. And what's interesting, it's 43 pages, so I'll just cut to the chase. But what's interesting is it goes on to say that the United States and the main players during this time, Russia being one of them, would agree to not conduct in other weather modification practices, including the use of practices which would cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and the such. So I didn't know if y'all were aware of this. It is just a treasure trove of information on this. And kind of stumbled across it. I'm a teacher, and we were doing some history on the Vietnam War and stumbled across this and just thought, wow, this has been going on for such a long time. So just wanted to pass that on to you. Didn't know if y'all had ever had a chance to see that.
That's great. Okay, so it's first of all, where can we find this website? It's at the University of Texas,
yes.
did you say? Or
Texas Tech University.
Texas Tech.
Vietnam. Texas Tech University. Go to Texas Tech University and go to the Vietnam Virtual Archives, and then you can just type in weather modification, and you would be surprised. I mean, of course, the Center of Foreign Relations is a big player in this document. Also, there are many mentions of people that we still hear their names today. Mr. Kissinger is in on this committee. And this is from the Douglas Pike collection. So it talks about the creation of hurricanes. I just couldn't believe I found it when I stumbled across it. And I teach high school history, and we actually talked about this one day, and we were just all during the time of the Hurricane Sandy. And, so immediately my kiddos were just like, well, could they? Would they? Is it possible? And but it is just a treasure trove of information, and to think that this was being considered,
wow,
even at this time.
Man, that is great. By the way, I am looking right now at the Vietnam Center and Archive at Texas Tech University.edu or TTU.edu.
Yes. And that search center, if you'll just type in weather modification, and then it'll be several PDFs. It'll go straight to the actual copy that was released to the public after, it was a top secret meeting, and then it was finally made, released to the public May 19th, 1974.
Okay, I've got. In fact, it's interesting because a PDF document under the Douglas Pike collection released. Well, actually, it was dated June 1st, 1974. Isn't it interesting, by the way? This has been around now. Almost going on 40 years, and we don't. Wow, it's almost as if. I certainly. Again, have a hard time believing, or would have had a hard time believing until now, or until recently, I should say, that this is taking place. But a Science and Government Report, here it is, June 1st, 1974. And boy, I want to thank you. What a wonderful resource this is. Wow.
Detailed information. And my husband was in the Vietnam War, and he used to talk about it just, which if you're over there during the rainy season, you're going to get rain. But he mentioned a couple of times that it wasn't the rainy season and that things would just oddly happen out of nowhere. And this document, actually, are you still there?
Oh yeah. We're still here. And
are you still there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I'm having another call trying to come in. But this document, I'm sorry, but my husband said that, you would just have, strange weather happen maybe when it wasn't during the rainy season or whatever. And so that caused me to really go back and look, and this breaks it down detailed. There's a from the Star Telegram, an article, and they actually called this the Watergate of weather warfare.
Ma'am, I got to tell you, this is you're a treasure of a call. We're gonna put up a link to this. I want to thank you so very much for the call.
Yes,
God bless
you're welcome.
You. Man,
and thank y'all for
so
everything you do. Y'all are awesome to listen to, and like I said, it's incredible that, I'm way out here in West Texas, but all of the things that are being, viewed worldwide, we see it too here. And seeing a lot of things going on very recently, especially since we've had a lot of oil activity out this way. We've had some really strange things occur.
And everything, it's related, and I've got to tell you that there are very few coincidences in life. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being a teacher. I got a feeling I would have loved you as a teacher, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I enjoy what I do. Thank you both.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Yeah, the military application of this initially of the spraying, people really should look at the as she put it, the Watergate of whatever she said, Watergate of Vietnam era, but use of military applications. But now it's been really co-opted into this geoengineering project, which we really, again, it's important to understand how the progression of this in all angles of this. This is a real thing. Go ahead, Joe.
That's true. We got another caller from the 325 area. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Well, Doug and Joe, how y'all doing?
Very well. What's up?
Well, I was just wondering if you'd watch the oil prices today, because we hit $1.07 a barrel, and
I saw
$1.05 to hit
earlier.
That $1.25.
Yep. And you're calling, if I recall correctly, you're calling for how much by November?
125.
Okay, so we're headed in that direction quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't remember
this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. The 125 price, what would we be looking at for a gallon of gasoline? Maybe not so much in the cities like where we see it $4.50 now. Maybe in the, we'll say the average right now is $3.40. Where would we see it if it hit that 125 mark?
I figure 25% increase, so you're probably looking at about $4.35 to $4.50 in normal America, and places like California and Massachusetts and New York probably closer to $5.
And there goes our cost of food, our cost of living. Yet none of this, ladies and gentlemen, is a part of the cost of living index by our illustrious government. Of course, they don't include the energy prices, or they disinclude it at convenient times. So there you have it. You're spot on, my friend.
I want to break down a barrel of oil for you. A lot of people think that a barrel of oil is 55 gallons. Well, it's not. Barrel of oil is 42 gallons. It's measured. It's an old Texas measurement when they used to bring whiskey out in 42-gallon wooden kegs, and they would ship the oil back in those kegs, okay? When they take those 42 gallons and they go through the process of refining, and I don't know a whole lot about the refining process. I've visited a refinery a time or two, but I don't know a whole lot about the insides and outs. But when they get done, they get essentially 43 gallons of product, because they change specific gravities and cook it and do whatever, and everything out of that barrel of oil is used, 100%. There's nothing that goes to waste. Even the sulfur that they remove, is used for fertilizers. Well, out of the 43 gallons, 17 are used for fuel, and that's all types of fuel. That's diesel fuel, jet fuel, which is kerosene, basically, automobile fuels. All the fuels are basically come out of that 17 gallons. The remainder, the 27, 26 gallons, are basically used for plastics. I mean, not 100%, but mostly plastics and polymers. If everybody looks around them right now, just about everything they look at is going to be made out of some kind of a petroleum product. Whether you got a bottle of medicine, aspirin, sitting there, it's in a plastic bottle, to the paints that you use on the walls, to almost all of your automobile anymore is plastic. Even in glass, making glass, they use a lot of petroleum products for the tints and the textures and whatever else. Your shoes. So when
everything,
when you realize your clothes, I mean, polyester is plastic.
Right.
A plastic fiber, carpet, linoleum. I mean, I couldn't even know where to stop on something like that. But when you look at the price of the barrel of oil going up another 25%, I always call it 20%, everything that you use that's plastic or petroleum product that the producer makes and has to buy those raw materials, he is going to have to pay a 20 to 25% increase in the cost of his raw materials. Now, that's just the beginning, because the majority of folks, you can't go out in your backyard and pick bananas. So if you're buying bananas, they're not coming to you, from your friendly Amish farmer down the road. Those bananas are getting here either by plane or ship. The majority of the food that most people get are coming in by plane or ship or rail or truck. Actually, by truck, the majority of it. The canning process just for canning beans and growing food, the fertilizers used for food. I mean, we are such a oil-dependent society that the cost of oil, the cost of the raw product, affects just about every consumer good that we buy, from the batteries that we use in our flashlights to the electricity that we use to our shoes, our clothes, everything.
Yeah, but caller, it gets me, and ladies and gentlemen, I think that we need to really have an adult moment here, okay? Because what this caller is saying is true. Isn't it interesting that the green movement will make so much a big deal about electric cars or cars that run on whatever? The bottom line with oil is what you just. I mean, I think you just. You're the caller of the program here, because seriously, look, when the price of oil, a barrel of oil, as you put it, and a lot of people do believe, even today, and I've seen it quoted in journals or in newspapers, at 55-gallon, barrels. No, you're right. It's 42, ultimately 43 after being processed. But the bottom line is, it doesn't stop. In other words, the effect on transportation is it's significant, but it's not just that. It's everything. So let's have an adult moment and understand exactly what we're dealing with and how this is going to impact every aspect of our lives. Every part.
Right. And that's one of the reasons that I really push survival and prepping. It's not because I'm concerned about, some power line eating locust plague coming out of Canada and wiping out everything. It's an insurance policy. It's a hedge against inflation. If you can buy a bag of beans today for $1, and by next year those bag of beans are $2, you saved half price on your food next year.
Right.
And if you look at what they're doing with the foods right now, they're tricking people. It's a tricky process. Look at the containers. What used to be a 13-ounce box of pasta is now 11.5 ounces. They did it specifically with coffee, because I'm kind of a coffee achiever. They're making the containers smaller, slapping a label, new and improved look on it, and charging the same price or even jacking the price up. You're getting less product. Yeah. And a lot of that is the inflation. A lot of it's fuel and inflation of the dollar. And it's going to get worse. As we continue to print more and more money, the dollar's going to devalue more, which is going to drive the price of the oil up. And as that price goes up, we're not getting, for the most part, most of us aren't getting a cost of living increase of 7 or 8 or 10% a year. Yet the products that we're consuming, whether it's Q-tips, toothpaste, whatever, is going up 10, 15%, 20% a year, depending on what product you're buying. And that's just domestic stuff. If you think about the stuff that we import, bananas, pineapples, fancy French cheeses and wines and German beers and all the stuff that we're importing, as our dollar loses value, in comparison to the euro, it costs more dollars to purchase the same product from Europe or Asia or Africa or wherever you get your, consumer goods.
Right.
So those prices are going to have to go up.
Right. Now let me, and for the listeners and caller, think about this. We all the keyboard warriors among us, we beat our chests and we say, well, now, United Nations planning on putting us in these cities and stacking us up and whatever, okay? What you're talking about here, they're not going to have to push us into a city type of environment, for example. The utopia as discussed by the Fabian socialists and the Marxists and the communists. No, we're going to be forced into these settlements, city settlements, because of, in part, of the same thing you're talking about, because in other words, you're not going to be able to get in your car and drive 25 miles to the local big box store to buy your box of bananas, for example. Okay, so people say, well, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. We won't let it happen, folks. It's happening, and this is the bigger picture that everyone is missing. And a big element of this is exactly what you're talking about, and that is the barrel of oil. Absolutely, man. Wow,
that's a big part of it. But if you also you take an average 20 or 30-something single guy living in an apartment in a suburb outside of Dallas or wherever, he wouldn't know how to plant pumpkin seeds or plant zucchini seeds or grow a garden if he had the land available to do it. So we're dependent on a system that is dependent on oil, which is a product that is manipulated. And I wish I could even start on the manipulation. We have groups of people that want to try to push the oil down, and we got groups of people that are constantly trying to pull the price up. And we have the government regulating it on this end, and we have the government regulating the trucking industry, and it's all tugging at each other all the time. We have groups that want to, crash the oil down to a low price so that they can buy up a lot of the resources, so they know when it goes back up they're going to make $1 million. And we got, people that have controlling interests or monetary interest in the current land leases or the oil processes that want to drive the price up so that they can continue to make more and more money. And you got the government, and then you got environmental nut jobs that are screaming, and it's enough to make me have to buy 3 rolls of duct tape a day to keep my head from blowing up when you start thinking about it.
Or I'm going to tell you what, you've added tremendously to our program. We're going to cut you loose as we close out our program, but thank you so much, and keep us posted as that dollar increase for barrels of oil goes up. God bless you, my friend. Thanks for your call, buddy. I appreciate it. Very good.
Adios,
very
good.
You. All right. And folks, this is exactly what we're talking about. We're looking at this total takeover, not only of America, but the global transformation of the world. Henry Kissinger calls on Obama now, or not now, but when he was elected, for implementation of the New World Order. Of course, that in a New York Stock Exchange interview, CNBC, Mark Haynes asked, it was January 5th, 2009, Mark Haynes asked Kissinger, what do you think is the most important thing for Barack Obama? And Kissinger replied, essentially, that he could develop or put America into this a transformation period where a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. And is this not what we're seeing? The guests we brought to you so far this week, beginning now with Stan Dale of the most recent guest, talking about the Club of Rome, talking about a number of things, Earth changes, and all of this is going to be, if you look at it, once again, I'm a big picture kind of guy, so if you step back and look at the big picture, don't look at all the small little news stories that everyone obsesses on.
Those are distractions, right?
Yeah.
Most news stories are distractions anymore, though, what I'm finding.
Well,
we see things like this is what really puzzled me. We talked about this about the Snowden and how those developments came after the scandal started to fall away. Now we see the insider threat program being plastered all over the mainstream when this was something that was released almost a month ago that we covered.
Exactly. Let me say something about Snowden. If you think, folks, for 1 minute that our government doesn't know where Snowden is, give me a break. They know exactly where Snowden is, or at any time when he was reportedly missing. Of course they know where he is. The insider threat program, is this nothing more than a Gestapo type tactic, a totalitarian tyrannical tactic to shut people up so they don't talk or they're afraid to talk? Isn't this to instill fear in the very people that could blow the whistle? Isn't this a chill to the whistleblowers, to the leakers like Snowden and others? Regardless of what you think about Edward Snowden or anyone else, whether they're a hero or a traitor, it doesn't change the fact that we've got a tyrannical process that is overtaking our country, and it's being implemented right now. Now, again, just kind of connect the dots with our guests. We had Scott Stevens on, the meteorologist, talking about the chemtrail, the various aspects of that. Is this not part of the geoengineering project, the depopulation, the salting of the earth? And regardless of how it started, as Stan Deo mentioned, is this not part of now part of the larger picture? Indeed, it is. And if people say, well, what are things going to look like in a number of in next year or whatever? Well, once again, look at the larger picture. Look at what's taking place. Look at the destruction of the dollar. Look at the Middle East geopolitics, the Middle East situation of Syria about to explode, and when it does, it's going to take most of the Middle East with it, because Syria is not going to implode, but explode. Nothing like we've ever seen. We're going to be, face to face with foreign troops over there. Our boys, our men, our women are going to be fighting in a war, not of our choosing, but as pawns in a global chess game that is designed to rearrange the global landscape to meet the objectives of the New World Order. And people say, well, the New World Order, come on, forget about it. No, it's here. We're living it every single day. We are living it, and this is the bigger picture.
Yeah, and the things that are not being talked about in the news are something that we need to look at. Why are they not looking at? We see so much work used to discredit the Bible, discredit what's in the Bible as being legitimate, yet the only real answers that we can find come from the Bible, especially what we're seeing today. From the people's behaviors to what's happening in the Middle East, to the things that have happened to Israel in the last 60, 70 years, how that's all come back around as the Bible said it would, to signs in the heavens, signs in the earth, earthquakes, earth changes, pestilence, famines. Those are all being seen right in front of our face, and those are the answers we are not being given.
But the Illuminati or the satanic, the Luciferian people behind that are pulling the strings, they're not very creative, shall we say. They're not very, creative is a good enough word. They are using the King James Version of the Bible. They're following it to the letter for a purpose different than the Christians, however, believing, of course, that they're going to be victorious. So when if you let's say you're an atheist, for example, or a non-believer listening to this program, and you might say, well, what does the Bible have to do with anything? It has everything to do with what we're talking about, because even if you don't believe, it doesn't matter what you believe. I've been told this a number of times.
It doesn't matter what I believe, right?
Right. It matters, okay, in the example or in the process of, or in the context of the objectives of the power elite. It matters what they believe. Okay? That's the issue. So if they believe, for example, in the King James Version of the Bible, to use that in a perverse way to accomplish their objectives, does that not warrant us to take a look and say, wait a minute, what's happening here? Of course it does.
Yeah, it does. And we see the escalation and attacks on Christians in Egypt and Libya and Syria, and this is going to continue to get worse as the instability continues. Even though it might seem to the contrary, the only stability we have is in the Lord, and we need to make sure that our foundation is there and it is strong, because that's the only thing we're going to have to lean on. As brother will come against brother, household will be torn apart from each other.
Exactly, and it's happening. And I hear from people all the time the arguments at the kitchen table, or the I shouldn't say arguments. I don't want to hear it from you at the kitchen table, or let's not talk about this tonight, or let's not talk about this. Can we not talk about what you want to talk about? And see, it's just not one night; it's every night, because it's the normalcy bias that people are they're clinging to. But from a biblical standpoint, once again, if we look at what's happening all across the world and overlay the scriptures onto the current headlines, you're going to find that they align very close, if not perfectly, to what's taking place. So all of this together, if I was a non-believer watching this and having read the Bible, I would quickly become a believer, because how can a document written 3,000 years ago, how can a document or a book
be so accurate?
Be so accurate, exactly.
From millenniums and millenniums previous that it was written. Tomorrow night, don't forget Brother Marcus Samuel for at least an hour. You're not going to want to miss listening to this gentleman. He is a very kind-hearted, excellent man of the Lord who has done extremely good works, and he continues to do those works. And he is somebody who's I've wanted to have on the show, and he said he would call when he was ready, and apparently he said he was ready. You're on mute.